We all know that fast, modern analytics is the difference between thriving and barely surviving. But in a world where data is becoming more distributed across private data centers, public clouds, even the network edge, that goal is increasingly hard to reach, and neither legacy platforms nor conventional cloud data warehouses are fully equipped to help. The Gartner Top Strategic Technical Trends for 2021 report suggests that we will see a distributed cloud model emerge to address this explosion of data growth outside the traditional data center. But to take full advantage of the benefits that distributed clouds offer, we first need to rethink our approach to how data is managed, processed and analysed in a heterogeneous, geographically separated and logically interconnected environment. Here to tell us more, please welcome the wonderful Mark Cusack, Chief Technology Officer over at Yellowbrick Data, and Tom Coffing, CEO at Coffing Data Warehousing. Mark, Tom, many thanks for joining us here today.
Hi there, Ben. Great to be here.
Hi, Ben.
Yeah, wonderful to have you both here up with us on the stage today. Before we begin, let's maybe just do the kind of the 30-second elevator pitch, rapid-fire intros to you both. Tom, I'll come to you first if I can.
Sure. My name's Tom Coffing. I've been in the business 45 years, scary as that is. I started out as a programmer, then I became a teacher, taught 1,000 classes around the world on Teradata. They called me Terra Tom. I started writing books. I wrote about 75 books. So my real whole deal in life is I'm into software, I'm into the desktop user, and I'm an expert on all systems. And that's really helped us for what we're going to discuss about today.
Yeah, great stuff. You don't look old enough to have been in the business for 45 years, Tom. You must have been a child prodigy. And Mark, how about yourself?
Well, Tom is certainly a hard act to follow after that, isn't it? I mean, so I'm the CTO at Yellowbrick Data, and I've been with Yellowbrick. We're a hybrid cloud data warehouse for the last 8 months. And before that, I was actually at Teradata as an executive there running the database business at Teradata. I can't possibly match a 45-year history as Tom has. So I've been in this data warehousing business for probably about 15 years.
Good stuff. Okay, many thanks both. So as I mentioned in my intro there, we're here today to talk about the changing nature of this environment, the rapidly changing nature of this in terms of analytics, data warehousing, distributed clouds, etc. Now, we've all heard over the past couple of days how organisations are continuing to prioritise investments in analytics. However, there are still challenges in implementing analytics and data warehousing solutions. So I'd like to start with a question around some of the key challenges. Where are organisations struggling when it comes to this? Mark, I'll begin with you if I can.
Yeah, and it was interesting to pick up from the previous speaker, talk about the soft skill gaps and the processes involved as well. But of course, technology remains a barrier that we have to overcome when we want to roll out data and analytics successfully across an organization. And, you know, what I see, one of the challenges, particularly emerging challenges, is I'm sure many of the folks in the audience here are either well onto their journey into data warehousing in the cloud or already there or thinking about it. And a lot of challenges come up around things like the heterogeneous infrastructure that you tend to face there. You know, you might be coming from an on-prem environment with your own data centers, your own hardware, software stacks and APIs and management layers, and then you're transitioning to something completely different with one of the particular cloud providers. And that in itself, that kind of heterogeneous nature of the infrastructure, the security models and different approaches becomes a challenge. And in fact, as you mentioned, distributed cloud is seen as a way of kind of removing and simplifying a lot of those challenges by saying, you know what we're going to do? We're going to take public cloud infrastructure and deploy it in private cloud environments or even at the network edge. And so now you have more of a homogeneous sort of platform across different clouds, even in your on-prem data center, but offering the same kind of services. And we think at Yellowbrick that's really, really important as an emerging, simplifying proposition here. Because just imagine you can apply the same skills anywhere you need to, and then you can start to factor in, where do I need to actually provide my data warehousing? What data sovereignty, governance, and latency factors are going to influence where I want to do my analytics? And that level playing field of distributed cloud, I think, is really going to be help to simplify those decisions and de-risk those decisions.
Yeah, de-risking key, obviously meeting the complexity challenges, obviously key as well. And I know that we're going to go further into distributed cloud as we go deeper into this conversation. Tom, same question to you really. Where do you see organizations struggling right now when it comes to some of these areas? Does that complexity challenge resonate with you?
It resonates well with me, Ben. You know, it's a data tsunami coming on to these companies right now. And yet it's a buyer's market because you can get the best database systems. You can go with multiple vendors on the cloud. But the biggest problem is, you know, we've been set up in an environment where we say, hey, you've got your OLTP system. Now we'll get those transactions. We'll put those to the data warehouse. We'll have certain people querying only one system. And that's completely changing. You can't store all the data a company has on one database. And you're going to need to be able to take advantage of data everywhere and anywhere. And the biggest complexity of this, these systems do not play well together. They don't talk. They don't like each other. So it's real difficult to join data across different systems. And it's extremely difficult just to move data between systems. And this is a complexity that the data scientist is ready for, but no one else is. And that's really where we've partnered with Yellowbrick, because that's our biggest interest: joining data from anywhere and moving data to and from anywhere. And people are not ready for this. They think it's decades out, and it's actually available today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll maybe kind of talk a little bit about some of those implementation journeys as we go, as we go deeper into this. This idea of data being found in multiple different locations, whether it be in public clouds, on-prem, at the network edge. We've started to hear a little bit more about this, and we also spoke a little bit about this in yesterday's session, where we were talking about some of the challenges around the data lake approach. How are you guys seeing this shift, this kind of mindset shift, maybe away from pouring everything into one location, into actually accessing data wherever it is and accessing it in these very dispersed environments? Tom, I'll come to you first with that one.
Well, some data is so large and it's so intense, you don't have time to move it to the cloud or from the cloud. You need to be able to let that data live where it is processed and stored and created. So the bottom line is, over the next decade, we're going to have systems out there. We'll have hundreds of systems we'll have to access, because, physical location is really an important factor with data. So the ability now for us to be able to put strategic, almost cell towers in between these systems, and then have those cell towers move the data between these varying systems, that's going to be the real key to the future. The whole future of this business will now change, especially as 2022 approaches, to be a situation where we will now join data where it lives across many different clouds, and we'll be able to move it. We'll be able to gather it together. And, that's going to change the entire industry for sure, because that's just something we haven't seen before. But that's an absolute must if you want to be a player today. Join data wherever it's at any time.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Mark, some thoughts on that? You kind of mentioned this very heterogeneous environment that the people face, multiple different clouds, multiple different data sources. So how are you seeing this mindset shift in the industry? Tom mentioned there that, people maybe see this as years out, perhaps decades out. But how are you seeing the mindset shift here today?
Well, it is here today, and I think many people are facing a situation where they will certainly go to a multi-cloud deployment approach, because it plays to trade one CSP off with another. If you're a retailer, you tend to avoid AWS, but so you may go for Google for your data warehousing in the cloud, but then you'll also place bets on Azure. So I imagine many folks listening will already be deeply involved in a multi-cloud strategy, which has its pros and cons, of course. You've got different technology stacks that you've got to deal with, different idiosyncrasies of these different cloud providers that you have to deal with. But the issue that I see, particularly in cloud data warehousing, is cost unpredictability, actually. And it's very easy to take advantage of that kind of unfettered elasticity that you're getting in the cloud, which is great. But if it is truly unfettered, you better have not only, the ability to scale out elastically, you better have the finances and the elastic wallet to go with it. I mean, you've got to really be on top of cost control when you're throwing stuff out of this at the cloud in your data warehouse. But, I see still plenty of businesses out there that want a mixed approach, that they've got sensitive data that they need to, and workloads that they need to keep on premises in their own data center. And some workloads will go to the cloud. And so we're definitely seeing a mix, this hybrid kind of approach to where they want data warehousing. And I see a bunch of really interesting emerging use cases that are coming out towards the network edge. When you look at Gartner's statistic that in 2025, 90% of the data will be generated outside of traditional data centers and public clouds. We're seeing a lot of businesses start to really think about what the opportunities and challenges are around that.
Yeah, absolutely. I can empathise with the pain of an elasticized wallet. Certainly since my kids became teenagers, that seems to have been a key requirement. You touched upon some of the emerging use cases there, Mark. Maybe you can go a little bit further into to some of those use cases.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about, and we have some customers today that are actually doing data warehousing in an operational, almost edge-like environment here in real time, which is traditionally what you don't associate data warehousing for. You don't think of it as a necessarily for real-time analytics. It's generally for sort of batch loading and downstream reporting. You don't think of data warehousing as a business critical, always on operational system. And we find ourselves in those kinds of positions these days because, to give you one example, one of our manufacturing customers, they manufacture lenses for cell phones. And they place Yellowbrick close to their production line because they have all of this quality data coming out of the production line, streaming into Yellowbrick. And then they want to do on-the-fly analytics against that for quality control. And so they can change the production line characteristics depending on the data that they're receiving there. And then they want to push that data into a centralized data warehouse in the cloud for long-term historical analysis of trends as well. And so we're seeing data warehousing really being pushed into these near real-time kind of analytics scenarios where you almost need to kind of have that kind of cross between an OLTP system and a traditional kind of OLAP system. I mean, Gartner call this hybrid transactional analytics processing, HTAP, but we are seeing this emerging very much in these real-time use cases today.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. And Tom, some thoughts from you on this. How are you seeing use cases emerging for this new technology, firms that are doing this now, today, and taking advantage?
What they're able to do nowadays is instead of doing the traditional, we have the ETL people do the loads, they're starting to open up their entire organization to allow their business users, their IT developers, to move data to and from any system that they need to for their users and customers. They're joining data across all these systems like it's one giant system. And that will be the new gold rush. There is gold in those hills. Go out and find it. And that's what these companies right now are trying to do. They're trying to break away from the traditional, I got chains on me where I can only access certain data. And they're starting to open up and explore more clouds, more opportunities with different vendors, different partnerships, and they're finding where those advantages are. And then once they can break through and join data across these systems and they're capable of moving data to and from these systems, data can strategically be where it needs to be. And the organization can go from days, weeks, months to getting information to saying, look, we need a competitive advantage. And that's the real key here. It's analytics and an advantage over the competition. We need the ability to get to this data and analyze it much, much sooner. And I really think this distributed cloud is an absolute inevitability. And it's exciting times for those that want to embrace the future.
Actually, can I just pick up, Tom, on a point you made there? Because I think it's really important about what data warehousing and modern data warehouses and cloud native data warehouses are all about here. And it isn't just about deploying a data warehouse in a public cloud. cloud native data warehousing does embody this cloudy self-service user experience that Tom referred to as well. It's getting the line of business owners able to consume analytics at the point of need within their domain of expertise, rather than having all the data owned by IT, all the access owned by IT. That's where agility and time to value comes from in a line of business. So I think what Tom's highlighted there in a cloud, what cloud native to my mind means is a cloudy user experience, but available everywhere and available certainly to the line of business. Really important point I think Tom's raised.
Yeah, thanks, Mark, for clarifying. Tom, just some follow-up thoughts on that. Where do you see the key attributes of this kind of next generation data warehousing?
It's an interesting scenario because the key aspects are going to be, in my mind, at the desktop of the user. They're the ones that are gathering the data. They're the ones that are helping the business users make the business decisions. So you have got to have a brilliant PC or desktop that gives them every system that they want to go after, and the ability to do analytics, the ability to move the data just with pointing and clicking, joining by pointing and clicking, sharing this across the enterprise with other business users. So it starts for me at the desktop. We've always been we've got the server and the processors. The desktop. And I'll tell you what else has complicated that, Ben, is the fact that people are no longer working inside the firewall. They're working anywhere. They could be in a hotel. They're working at home. So there's actually another combination here. The way we have approached this and the way we think it's going to be done by everyone, because we've been doing it for 15 years in an attempt, is the ability to put out thousands of users and PCs where they can have just the ability to do things they could never do before. These people couldn't move data. They couldn't join across systems. They have to be able to do that. But this is really key in what we've learned. We place strategic servers out there on every cloud, on every on-premises location, and it is the go-between between cross systems. So when someone's at the PC and they want to join data across 3 different systems, they do it right there at the PC, and then the server manages it all on a high-speed network. The same with moving data. You need for your interns to be able to have the ability to move data if necessary, and they drag something over, and the PC, and then the server once again takes over. So it's a lot about the technology at the desktop, the actual data warehouses out there and servers, but then these intermediate servers that control the movement between the physical databases you want to go after. If you don't understand the physicality of that, you've got some learning to do. It took us a long time to realize you can't move big data over a small network. So you have to really be clever in how the architecture you build in your organization is done.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Some really kind of practical ideas. Mark, just to kind of pick up on some of those points, what for you are the practical foundational elements that companies need to consider as they're starting to think about embracing this new type of approach?
Well, I think, the main thing is, I think if you're looking for embracing a new approach of dealing with multi-cloud deployments, hybrid cloud deployments, you want to look at data warehouses that are comfortable in running in all of these environments. And I go back to that point about that cloudy user experience, which I love. And companies, in the new breed of cloud data warehouse providers in the cloud have done a great job around the user experience side of things. But what we believe at Yellowbrick is that you should have a user experience, a cloudy user experience around data warehousing, regardless of where you run that data warehouse, whether it's even in your own data center. You should be able to take advantage of elasticity of consumption models in terms of billing. And the same thing should apply in the cloud. And so what we're all about is providing kind of a common standard of user experience for data warehousing that's industry leading in terms of being fast, industry leading in terms of being cost effective, and simple to use as well, and based on kind of open standards like things like PostgreSQL, which is what we're based on in terms of the language we support, which means migration, which is typically one of the big challenges. If you're looking at migrating from one data warehousing platform to another, it's one of the big challenges. It's one of the big sort of barriers you have to overcome. But I think it's never been easier to move between data warehouses And we've got partners like Tom who are kind of experts in this area, a lot of automation for moving data from one data warehouse to another, from cloud to cloud, et cetera, as Tom said, to join data from different data warehouses on the fly. There's a lot of tooling these days that wasn't available a few years back to help lower the barrier to moving your workloads between different vendors and avoiding that kind of lock-in that a lot of the legacy vendors leave you with.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Tom, just to follow up on that, what are the key elements to think about as organisations are starting this migration journey? You've obviously done a lot of these. What are the key bits to get right for you?
Well, I'll tell you, we do it a little bit differently, Ben. We believe that if you want to move from, Netezza to Yellowbrick, you're going to have an ETL team that's going to do that migration for you. And we provide those servers that sit in between these databases and the desktop that makes it so easy, and you can do a professional job. But the real key is that it also has to have the sophistication, but be so easy that you can allow other people, everybody around now says, listen, I need some data moved. When's that going to happen? A day, 2, 3, a week? They don't want to have that happen anymore. They're able to use the ETL tools to point, to click, and now people can move data at a much faster pace. You can have many more people doing this. So the real key is that you need an environment where you go, okay, we're going to have the right tools that'll make it great for the ETL teams, but also all my individual departments and users can move the data where they need to move it simply. I've been through it for 15 years. Just converting the table structures is a nightmare. So instead of taking 3 months, we've made that down to 3 seconds. And the same with the load utilities. It's a complicated process. If you invest in the right database and you invest in the right desktop and server tools to make that happen. Right now, it's automated. And that's the key. Don't try to do it by hand and take months, if not years. Get the tools in place right now where if you need to migrate to Yellowbrick tomorrow or another database the next day, you can do it that hour.
Yeah, automation absolutely critical to a lot of this. Mark, I want to pick up on something that Tom mentioned earlier on, which is this idea of how things have changed in the past 12 months in terms of the way we are all working. Tom mentioned this idea of a lot of users now working outside of the corporate firewalls. We've seen that change very much. So, are there any data management or data security implications for kind of shifting towards this more distributed cloud model? And if so, how do we mitigate against those?
Well, in fact, rather than challenges, I think there's a huge number of opportunities to simplify the landscape here with distributed cloud. Again, if you think of distributed cloud, it basically taking public cloud stacks and, AWS, think of AWS Outpost, Google Anthos. There are services there that they will deploy their public cloud stacks in your own data center. So now we've got a common infrastructure here. Now that has implications for lots of things. You mentioned about geographically disparate working. Well, now you have the opportunity to decide where you want to deploy analytics close to the people that are going to consume it, right? From a reducing data latency and query latency perspectives. But what distributed cloud gives you, I think, is going to be the ability to simplify the governance and privacy and sovereignty issues around data, because you'll be able to easily apply the same kind of security policies that you apply to data within your public cloud to data that might be in some geographically different location outside of the cloud as well. So rather having different security models on premises and in the cloud, there's going to be a unification there. And I think, I think a really key point of this is you'll be able to share data. It's almost a bit sort of a counterintuitive thought. If you can have clarity on how you are protecting your data, you can actually share it with more confidence as well, because you're sharing it to the right people at the right time, at the right place. And I think the distributed cloud side of things is really going to simplify and even increase the security and governance around data in the future.
Yeah, fascinating. Tom, I can see you nodding there. So let's get some thoughts from you on this. We talked right at the start about this, the complexity of the landscape, and of course that applies to security as well. So how are you seeing this space evolve?
Well, I think Mark really hit that on the head, because the real tricky part is that we go, oh yeah, listen, we're going to implement here and here and here and here and here, but we want some of the same security protocols over different clouds. And I go, oh, whoa, this doesn't sound really very simple. But, a lot of people said, Albert, I'm not going to the cloud. We're a financial institution and we can't be going out. And I go, listen, security over time will be better on those clouds probably than in your data center. So I really like what Mark's really brought up, is the point that we're going to have many heterogeneous locations with different platforms, different clouds, but we're going to have many of the same protocols to manage that data across those systems and to be able to handle the security, which is very interesting and getting more complex these days. And you're going to see a lot of changes there, okay, including encryption at rest and things of this nature. So as Mark said, I think it's going to really help the security thrive and grow over time. But it's a whole different animal that we're working with now. And it's there's some complexities to tackle. There's a lot of work to do. I'd get on it right now.
Yeah, good stuff. Thanks, Tom. And so let's maybe just get some thoughts on what companies need to do next. How do we overcome perhaps resistance to change? We're seeing a lot of change in the market right now. Organizations have so much change to process and to implement right now. So why should this be an absolute priority for folks in this space? Tom, I'll come to you first.
You can only fight evolution so long. And it has become extremely obvious. You can't store all your data in one place. You need to take advantage of the cloud and the many different offerings. You're going to have to do one thing for sure, and that is change your approach to the way you're going to do your computing. And yet, if you think about it in the longer term of what you really want to accomplish, what you really want to be able to accomplish is the same thing you've had with one system. Oh, people can join data. All right. They can see things from an entire enterprise point of view. But that one system is now all systems. And that's where you will be in the utopia when you say, listen, we got data everywhere and we can access it where it lies. This is going to sound crazy, but eventually querying is going to be like what you're going to do on Google. You won't know where the data resides. And that's a big piece of this as well. So it's a journey where your end goal is to say, I got data everywhere, but it's all one system.
Yeah, great stuff. And Mark, how about yourself? Where's the imperative? What do people need to think about in order to, I guess, kickstart this journey or take it to the next phase?
Look, I don't think there's probably any company on the summit here today that isn't going through some degree of platform modernization or as part of a digital transformation initiative or something like that. And when you're looking to modernize your data analytics infrastructure, I'd really think of it from the point of view of which vendors are going to make the decisions easy for you, which ones are going to de-risk your buying decisions. Because you need to build inbuilt flexibility about where you want to deploy analytics in the future, right? Don't get locked into a single cloud provider, a single kind of technology necessarily. You need to look at ones that are going to give you the ability to make it easy to onboard, but potentially easy to get off as well. Because, you've got to think, if you're going to data warehousing with one particular cloud provider, for example, you really are, in one sense or another, locking yourself into that environment because you find yourself integrating with all their other constituent kind of ecosystem services around there. But think about the future and, later down the line, you might want to move to another cloud provider or repatriate some of that workload back to your on-premises environment. So look for flexible, open kind of solutions to your data platform needs. And my second piece of advice was, really think about what you need to put in data lakes and what is best in data warehouses. And don't be fooled to think that you can do data warehousing with data lakes or data lake workloads in data warehouses. They're complementary technologies. They work well together, but there are idiosyncrasies with both that you need to really think about when you want to put these technologies to serve your business.
Yeah, great stuff. Thanks, Mark. Mark, we've just had a quick question come through on the chat, which is around existing BI and analytics tools. You've probably just got a minute or two just to squeeze this in. So how do you ensure that existing BI and analytics tools work within this new environment? We'll find out who submitted that question for you. But Mark, maybe just, I guess 30 seconds to a minute on that.
Yeah, well, we made a conscious decision at Yellowbrick when we were building our MPP scale-out data warehouse to make this Postgres SQL compatible. So at the outside, we look and smell like a Postgres database, which is one of the most widely used database SQL languages in the world. And what it means is an entire ecosystem already around there and a bunch of skill sets that are familiar with Postgres. Now, under the hood, we are very, very different, and we scale up to petabyte levels and things like that. But what it does mean from a BI tooling and data integration tooling perspective is we just work out of the box, because the same kind of ODBC and JDBC drivers that Postgres uses, we use as well. So whether it's Tableau, Power BI, Looker, whatever BI tool you're interested in, that just works out of the box with Yellowbrick. And it really makes, again, it's about de-risking those buying decisions, right? If you know you can deploy a data warehouse that operates at massive scale, sub-second query performance, but still works with all your analytical ecosystem, you've made a sensible, sort of easy choice there.
Yeah, great stuff. Many thanks, Mark. Many thanks, Tom, for sharing your thoughts here this morning. Fascinating stuff. Enjoy the rest of the summit. Take care, guys.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks very much. Okay.